This is LiveWell Talk on domestic violence. I'm Dr. Dustin Arnold, Chief Medical Officer at Unity Point Health, St. Luke's Hospital. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Joining me today is Sara Nightingale, Program Coordinator for St. Luke's TIES program, and Erica Albaugh, Trauma Abstractor and Injury Prevention Educator at St. Luke's. Sara and Erica are also members of St. Luke's Stop Abuse for Everyone Committee, using the acronym of S.A.F.E, and are here today to discuss domestic violence. What are we doing as a team at Unity Point Health, and what are the resources available for victims and their families? Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you, Dr. Arnold.
Thank you.
I've always been a little annoyed by the term domestic violence, just in the fact that it's violence. And I think the descriptor of domestic downplays the gravity of the situation. Police officers respond to domestic disturbance, right? And it sounds like, well, it's not a real call. They're just going to domestic disturbance. But however, that's in the history of law enforcement, particularly here in Eastern Iowa, more police officers have been killed in the line of duty responding to domestic disturbances than bank robbers, et cetera. So, so sometimes I think that's just my personal opinion, but it kind of minimizes the severity of what is going on. So let's start off by what is the definition for domestic violence? Sara?
Yeah, so domestic violence is really categorized as patterns of behaviors that one partner in an intimate relationship uses to maintain power and control over another partner in that intimate relationship. So the thing that is also important to remember here is it doesn't discriminate. So it can happen to someone of any race, any age, gender, sexual orientation. It's characterized by maintaining power and control over another individual in that intimate partner relationship. There are 6 kind of commonly viewed types of domestic violence, according to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. I think that as a society, there's a couple that we really view very easily and kind of understand when we talk about domestic violence. But there are some other types of abuse that occur as well that we're just not as commonly versed about or don't always think of as a domestic violence situation.
What are some of those?
First, to kind of discuss some of the more commonly ones, the first one is kind of physical abuse. That's the most commonly thought of type. It includes sort of aggressive acts against an individual, sometimes even prevention of seeking medical attention based on the injuries that come from those aggressive acts. It can be even prevention of normal eating and sleeping habits. So that could be restricting diets or restricting sleep, as well as sort of determining when an individual eats and sleeps, or even forcing the use of drugs or alcohol on an individual when that's not their own choice or decision in that situation. One of the statistics related to physical abuse that we really wanted to bring attention to today was that 1 in 2 female murder victims and 1 in 13 male murder victims are actually killed by intimate partners.
Right.
So
right.
It's a very important topic that we bring this up today.
I find that the disparity in that statistic a little bit more than what I thought. Now, I was certainly going to expect that the ratio to be a little bit higher for women, but I didn't think it would be that much different than for men from that.
And I think part of that can be reporting as well. When
Sure.
It comes to males, sometimes we don't always they don't always seek help or support as much as females do, kind of statistically perhaps, with stigma that comes around domestic violence.
Sure.
For males. Another form of domestic violence that is very commonly known is emotional abuse. So those are things like name calling, insulting or continuously criticizing someone, isolating them from their family and friends, gaslighting, which is kind of a new term or something that's more commonly known right now, which sort of refers to the act of undermining another person's reality by denying facts. So it's kind of manipulating someone into questioning their own reality based on factual information. And then attempting to control appearances. So that can be things like whatever they're wearing, whether they wear makeup or not, how they wear their hair, how they groom themselves. Those can all be forms of emotional abuse as well. Sexual abuse or coercion is also kind of what we commonly think of. And that is sort of forcing or manipulating an individual into having sex or performing sexual acts, hurting someone during sex if it's not maybe a former agreed upon situation, ignoring someone's feelings regarding sex, making a partner feel like they owe their partner sexual favors, or even making someone feel threatened or afraid of what might happen if they say no. So it's not always about the actually forcing someone into a sexual act, but it can be just the threat or fear that exists if they say no. Again, another statistic to highlight that I just thought would be important here is that 1 in 5 women and 1 in 40 men in the United States are victims of rape or attempted rape during their lifetime. So oftentimes that happens more so with someone they know as opposed to a stranger. So oftentimes someone they might be in an intimate relationship with.
Erica, you have a perspective on this?
Yeah, well, we also have another one that's not really known as well either. It's reproductive abuse. And that's referring to refusing to use a condom or types of birth control, poking holes in condoms, or not supporting their partner in a decision to either have abortion or not having the abortion, not having that partner to let them have their own mind and choose what they want to do. Also, we have financial abuse. That includes stealing or hiding someone's money from them or denying them access to it. Forbidding someone to work or limiting the amount of hours that they're able to work, or not contributing to the household expenses like clothing, or contributing to the household as in like helping pay rent or stealing money from their friends or families. We also have digital abuse, which is pretty high, I think, among the younger generation as well, as everyone has Facebook or Twitter or whatnot. So when digital abuse comes in, it's sending negative or insulting or threatening emails or messages on social media like Facebook or Twitter. It's also stealing like their password or insisting that they give them their password, or just simply by putting a tracker on their phone or their car so they can always check and see where they're at and monitor what they're doing.
Huh. Yeah, I think those are some things that don't come to mind when you think about domestic violence and abuse, but they certainly are significant. And it all comes down to this form of intimidation. Mm-hmm. Really, you're trying to influence someone else's behavior. I think it was Greenland, but it could have been Iceland. They're both island nations. But they actually had to shut down liquor stores during the COVID lockdown because domestic violence skyrocketed. So what have we seen with the COVID lockdown? I mean, I even think the best marriage is strained when you're both in the same household for more than what you used to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we will end up seeing some statistics come from this. It may be a little too soon to really know where that lands, but COVID has definitely made things more challenging for domestic violence victims, their loved ones. Just as you said, any sort of healthy marriage being in a close quarters consistently together, especially during kind of that stay-at-home time frame,
and then
is difficult.
You add financial disruption on top of that, or financial unpredictability.
Yes. I think, and part of that with the closure of many social service agencies, a lot of people going to telehealth services, maybe social workers not being allowed into the home where maybe they normally would be, or seeing individuals on a daily basis or a weekly basis, and some of those social distancing requirements. So families and friends weren't able to go visit their family and friends. I think what we are seeing is that victims during this time period have been more disconnected from the individuals who might be able to help and support them during that time. And so, I don't have specific statistics, and we might not have those for a little while until we really are able to see. I think what we're going to be seeing is a decrease in reporting, but probably an increase in the actual domestic violence that's occurring.
I think that's probably correct, and I've heard Dr. Buttress from the Child Protection Center feels the same way about child abuse, that the less, because they're not going to school,
right.
So they're not going to school, and the teacher's not noticing a mark or a change in behavior, and then subsequently mandatory reporter kicking in, and I'm sure that's the same for an adult victim of abuse, perhaps they're not being noticed by a coworker, and someone's not reaching out to them. I think for people that haven't had this in their life, particularly men, maybe I'm describing myself here. It's hard to grasp. It's hard to understand that, I'm of the generation that, you don't hit a woman, you don't hit a girl. That's just a given. And it's not to say that kids today think that it's okay to do that. So I think it's hard to understand when this happens as someone that, it hasn't affected their lives. But what sort of concept is there as to why this happens? I mean, I guess I'm afraid that a victim would just normalize and say, well, this is just part of being married.
Mm-hmm.
This is just part of being in a relationship. You got to get backhanded every now and then, which is, unequivocally false. But so what is some of the not necessarily rationale, but how do you break that sort of mindset of, well, it's my fault. I triggered this. He worked so hard and I triggered this. It's a hard concept for people to understand, but how's that addressed, and what resources do we have that fit into that to help people address that?
That's a great question, and I think a lot of times
all my questions are great. But go ahead.
I believe that. I think it is a struggle for those victims who do, like you were saying, think that it's my fault. I caused this particular situation. And oftentimes that comes from, that doesn't just sort of spur overnight. That oftentimes comes from somewhere. And I think it's that coercion and that manipulation, that power and control over time that sort of kind of fosters that reality for that individual.
My grandmother, she was born in 1918. She's passed away. She was well into her 90s. Every divorce was the wife's fault, because she grew up in that generation that you take care of your husband, and she was never a victim of abuse or anything, and had a very wonderful marriage. But that's she just automatically, any divorce was that. Well, the wife must not be keeping that home happy. So I think there's this pressure probably not to speak up at times, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of times perpetrators are using things against an individual as well. So if they have kids together, there's the manipulation of children that can be used against an individual. So it can prevent them from not wanting to seek help, or threatening against family or friends. If that perpetrator is the sole financial provider as well, or contributes significantly financially to the relationship, that can be another reason why victims don't stand up for themselves or don't kind of come forward, because of fear. What happens beyond this life that I know? Sometimes it's I know what exists in this world for me right now. If I step beyond that, I'm not sure what happens. So if I come out of this place where I'm not financially taken care of in a certain way, then what happens for me and my family? And so it can be a lot of that manipulation and coercion by the perpetrator. I think in this local community in Lynn County, we have some wonderful resources that help an individual. I think one thing I wanted to highlight, the important thing for maybe loved ones of a potential victim is to know that it oftentimes takes multiple times for a victim to leave, like I just discussed with the manipulation and coercion with children or other threatening of other loved ones. It can often take multiple times. And so the important thing is to be supportive, be there when you can, have resources available. And when that person is ready to seek out those resources, being respectful of that and helping support them on that journey. For example, Waypoint Services is an excellent organization in the Lynn County area who helps domestic violence victims and their loved ones. We also have Amani Community Services. They focus on African Americans who are struggling with domestic violence issues as well as sexual abuse. And Friends of the Family is also another great resource of the area who provides domestic violence shelter and support as well.
So what is the S.A.F.E committee? I'd never heard of this. Stop Abuse for Everyone. Give me the history of that here at St. Luke's, and what plans do you have for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and what services do you provide? Never heard of it.
Yeah. So the S.A.F.E committee, as you said, stands for Stop Abuse for Everyone, and it was established as a community for Unity Point Health in figuring out how we can make sure that we are, at least as a hospital setting and then our clinics, how we can make sure that we are addressing these issues of abuse as we see them coming into our facilities, as well as how we can support the community in that matter as well. And so it's about educating the employees on how to recognize things like domestic violence, child abuse, elder abuse, human trafficking. Those are kind of our 4 focus groups as well. And so we're educating staff. We're learning how we can contribute to our community and how we can be better at supporting victims who are going through some of this. And Erica can actually touch on what we are doing as a S.A.F.E committee. We are made up of social workers around the hospital. Myself, I'm the program coordinator of the TIES program. Erica works with trauma. So we're a variety of disciplines around the hospitals trying to support kind of the same cause. So Erica can just discuss what we're doing as it relates to domestic violence.
So since October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we are going to be doing our annual Waypoint Food and Hygiene Drive again this year. Last year, we were able to collect close to 5,000 items for the Waypoint shelter.
I do remember this last year.
Yeah, I think your department won once.
Yeah.
So with that being said, it's going to be October 5th through the 23rd. So look in your different units for the boxes and the bags and the list of items that we're going to be looking for. And again, this year, we are hoping to do that pizza party again for the largest department with the most donations and the smallest department with the most donations as well. We are also going to be having the lights outside be purple to support domestic violence and to raise awareness. And then Waypoint is selling Gentleman Campaign shirts, which are really cool. You can get those at the waypointservices.org. And you can wear those or just a purple shirt every Friday for the month of October as well. The Gentleman's Campaign is a series of events that are held to recognize the individuals, especially men, who are taking a stand with domestic violence. So it's a group of guys that are kind of leading that on and fighting against domestic violence.
That's wonderful. I think, like a lot of things, the first step is drawing attention to it. And then hopefully the rest of it falls into place. So I think that's
Absolutely.
Outstanding. What words of advice do you have for someone who may be struggling with either domestic abuse or violence? What would be the words of advice if I was a victim of that and I contacted? What would be the first conversation you have?
I would probably just let you know that I'm here if you need anything or a place to go, and also to use those resources. Call that 211. If you need help and you're not in the Lynn County area, they can give you resources in other areas of the state as well. To always just reach out. There's people that are here to talk to you. You can go to the police department, the fire department, the hospitals. There's people that are willing to help you get the help that you need. And don't stop trying because your life is worth it.
Absolutely.
I would agree with Erica on that 100%. And also to remember that it's one day at a time, sometimes 1 minute at a time, sometimes 1 second at a time to walk through this process. I think what can be discouraging sometimes is thinking far in the future of what happens with my life if I step out of this relationship and walking into kind of uncertainty and not knowing what lies ahead. And so thinking about taking that one step at a time, like I said, sometimes 1 second at a time. Sometimes it feels like it gets worse before it gets better, in the sense that it can be scary, but that there are people here to support you along the way and that your life is worth it. Your children's life is worth it. You deserve to be loved and cared for, whether that's by family, friends, or in a significant other relationship. And so your life is worth seeking help and support for. So taking that one step at a time.
Sara, Erica, thank you for coming. This has been great information as well as advice. Again, that was Sara Nightingale and Erica Albaugh, members of St. Luke's Stop Abuse for Everyone Committee, the S.A.F.E Committee. Thank you for listening to LiveWell Talk On. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your family, friends, neighbors, strangers about our podcast. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, be well.